Welcome to Weekly World News on Spring Nectar TV, brought to you by Vibha Ramesh, Los Angeles, United States. First, the top headlines. Truck convoy urging the end of all COVID restrictions. Bloody Sunday anniversary commemorated. Russia intensifies attacks on Ukraine. NATO disapproves no-fly zone. India brings back more Indians from Ukraine. IISc talks of warm vaccine. The world joins hands in support for Ukraine. New South Wales continues to reel under the impact of floods and rains. Moving on to news in detail. On Sunday, U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris commemorated the anniversary of Bloody Sunday in Alabama. To that effect, she addressed the crowd from the same bridge where black voting rights protesters were attacked by white state troopers 57 years ago. She addressed the crowd by saying, "Today we stand on this bridge at a different time. We again, however, find ourselves caught in between injustice and justice, between disappointment and determination. Nowhere is that more clear than when it comes to the ongoing fight to secure the freedom to vote." It may be noted that after over 5 decades, Democrats are still trying to update the landmark law and facilitate the people to vote more conveniently. Meanwhile, a convoy of trucks and cars circled Washington, D.C. on Sunday, demanding the lifting of all COVID-related restrictions. Welcoming the new work week, the convoy, called People's Convoy, consisted of about 1,000 vehicles and drove around Washington at minimum legal speed, with their sole intention being to send across the message to politicians over COVID restrictions. And on the Capitol attack, the first criminal trial took place on Monday, wherein vigilante mob Guy Reffitt was tried for breaching the U.S. Capitol in 2021. To that end, a 12-member jury has been formed to deliberate on Reffitt's charges. News has it that Reffitt faces charges for transporting firearms during a civil disorder, obstruction of an official proceeding, obstructing justice, being unlawfully present on Capitol grounds while armed with a firearm, and interfering with law enforcement officers during a civil disorder. Moving on, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, refused to sanction a no-fly zone over Ukraine. This move has irked the Ukrainian president as he remarked that such a move was equivalent to giving the green light for further bombing of Ukrainian cities and villages. In an address to the world, he said that all the people who die from this day forward will also die because of you, because of your weakness, because of your lack of unity. In response, NATO Chief Stoltenberg said that the only way to implement a no-fly zone is to send NATO fighter planes into Ukraine's airspace and then impose that no-fly zone by shooting down Russian planes. If we did that, we'll end up with something that could end in a full-fledged war in Europe, involving many more countries and causing much more human suffering. Meanwhile, reigning credit card companies Visa and MasterCard announced the suspension of their operations in Russia. Commenting on the latest move, Chairman and CEO of Visa remarked that we are compelled to act following Russia's unprovoked invasion of Ukraine and the unacceptable events that we have witnessed. We regret the impact this will have on our valued colleagues and on the clients, partners, merchants, and cardholders we serve in Russia. This war and the ongoing threat to peace and stability demand we respond in line with our values. Close at heels were McDonald's, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, and Starbucks, all of which suspended their operations in Russia. And that would mean a collective loss of over 70,000 jobs. Over to India, the government brought back over 2,100 Indians, including students from Ukraine, on Sunday. To that end, 11 flights embarked on Operation Ganga and flew from the neighboring states. And on Monday, 8 more flights brought back over 1,500 Indian citizens back to their homeland. In the words of the government summarizing the operation thus far, the number of Indians airlifted by 66 special civilian flights goes up to 13,852. Till date, the IAF has flown 10 sorties to bring back 2,056 passengers while taking 26 tons of relief load to these countries as part of Operation Ganga. Meanwhile, individual studies from the CSIRO have shown that the vaccine formulations developed by the Indian Institute of Science in collaboration with biotech startup Minvax help develop antibodies that neutralize the Omicron variant too. Sources say that this warm vaccine can survive at 37 degrees Celsius and withstand temperatures as high as 100 degrees Celsius when kept in freezing conditions. According to the IISc, such warm vaccines can be stored and transported without expensive cooling equipment to remote areas for mass vaccination. Most vaccines need to be stored between 2 to 8 degrees Celsius or much colder temperatures to avoid losing their potency. And here's how trillions of people from across the globe show their support for Ukraine. Demonstrators in the thousands rallied in New York, Paris, Vancouver, and Santiago, demanding the end of Russia's invasion. To that end, they rallied on Saturday, just as the Russian invasion escalated to the next level of bombardment. Sources say that a total of 119 protests were carried out in several parts of France, with about 41,600 people engaging in the protests. While one Franco-Ukrainian protester commented, "Despite the suffering, we're going to win, we're sure of it." Another remarked, "We will be here every weekend, in Paris or elsewhere, until Putin leaves, withdraws his tanks." On the same note, London's Trafalgar Square too had hundreds of demonstrators showing their support for Ukraine. Over to Pakistan, a mosque in Peshawar was inadvertently host to a suicide bomber. News has it that the bomb killed around 56 people and injured 194. And according to a spokesperson at one of the hospitals where the injured are being treated, most of them are in a critical condition. The attack targeted on the Shia community was claimed by the Islamic State group, which further threatened to engage in greater violence against the minority community. Sources say that the bomber had strapped 12 pounds of explosives and opened fire outside the mosque and then rushed inside to detonate his suicide vest. Moving on, confusion and chaos over Brexit rules continue as a European Union citizen was mistakenly detained at the border. To that end, Myro Meadows was detained in Calais for 10 hours for the alleged use of a false name and failure to disclose a driving offence. Records show that Meadows was approved by the Home Office to become a British citizen and he was rightfully entitled to be in the country. His detainment led to him filing a complaint as he said, "I thought, have they lost their minds? I didn't come in on a floating door. I drive in a car. I understand that there is human error, but every single thing they said about me was rubbish. I have traveled the world, but this is the rudest approach I have ever experienced." Following his complaint, the Home Office has agreed to pay him around €6,000 as compensation. And in Australia, New South Wales continues to be under the radar as the weather system predicted the arrival of strong winds before moving on to the Tasman Sea. Subsequently, 60 evacuation orders urging over 40,000 residents to move out to safer places were executed. According to the Met, damaging wind gusts associated with this low are occurring across the central and southern coast and hinterland, with conditions gradually easing during today. That brings us to this week's Did You Know? The giraffe, being the only animal with the longest neck, is no news to us. But did you know of the human with the longest neck? Well, the longest human neck, measuring 7.7 inches, belongs to a woman in Thailand. In relative terms, that's 2 times the length of an average human neck. And in the Highlands tribe culture, female children wear brass rings on the neck starting 5 years of age and keep adding rings as they age. On that note, I come to the end of this week's World Report. I'll see you again next Friday with more world news on Spring Nectar TV. Thank you for watching. Stay safe.